Do the hi everybody like the Simpsons doctor. Hi everybody. You know that do that.
Hi everybody. Welcome to Course Studies, a showcase of teaching practices and principles. This is our very first episode, a pilot of sorts, but we're going to plow through and do our very best to represent an idea that we've had for quite a while. What we want to do is introduce you to a couple of individuals who both had a unique approach to dealing with their curriculum after and in the midst of a pandemic. And so what we're going to look at is what approach did they take to teach their course? What are some of the things that really guided their decisions, and how's it going so far? Maybe we'll catch up later and find out how it finished. So our two guests today are Dr. Michael Olson of the University of Tennessee and Dr. Janelle Cavazos of the University of Oklahoma. So Michael, introduce yourself.
Hi everybody. I'm Michael Olson. I'm a social psychologist at the University of Tennessee. I study attitudes, persuasion, prejudice, close relationships, and some other stuff. I was honestly very opposed to online teaching for a long time, and then I had to do it, and so I've tried to make the best of it.
Awesome. And Dr. Cavazos.
Hi, I am Dr. Cavazos, and I'm the Intro Psych Coordinator at the University of Oklahoma. I teach really large sections of Intro Psych, and I've taught online for a long time, but always with classes of about 30. And this is the first time that I'm teaching all of my students online, which is enrollment of 985 this semester. So trying to go from that many usually in the classroom to that many online has been a lot of work and a lot of challenge.
Yes. All right. So hopefully you can start to see some of the differences, some of the things we're going to focus on today. One of the things we want to do in course studies is we want to really dive in and try to appreciate the different approaches that people can choose to take to teach courses in psychology or even other disciplines. And we're going to be a big team. There's going to be many times where you'll see different folks leading the discussion, different folks on the panel. But today we have two of our founding members of Course Studies. We have Dr. Sierra Kidder and Dr. Jennifer Blush. Do you want to say something about yourself, Sierra?
Sure. Hi, I'm Dr. Kidder. I'm an instructor at Marian University in Wisconsin. And I teach pretty much everything, and I've been teaching online for a long time. But I'm really interested to see how these two instructors have taken their much larger classes online and what approaches they're taking.
Excellent. And Dr. Blush?
Hello, I am Dr. Jennifer Blush. So I am a cognitive psychologist at William Peace University in Raleigh, North Carolina. So we are a very small school. I teach all of the cognitive courses there and some research courses as well, and they're all 25 students or smaller. And I'm really excited to just learn more about teaching online, and this is only my second year being full-time faculty, so I'm just still trying new things out, so I'm always excited to learn something new.
Awesome. By the way, I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Dr. Bob Dubois. I'm also at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and I am the Associate Director of our undergraduate programs in psychology. In addition, I also am a lecturer, so I do teach courses in research methods, general psychology, and also some other advanced and graduate courses in psychology. I've been teaching online like Sierra for a very long time. And so this is something that I think is a really exciting time for us to kind of dive into this topic. So one of the things we decided to do first up is to look at how different instructors took on the challenge of adopting their typical practices and principles to an online environment. So Dr. Olson, walk us through your course.
All right. Well, before I screen share, I guess I would like to just share a little bit about my perspective and my teaching values and principles and guiding forces and such. I first should, point out that my appointment is at a Research One institution, and I'm largely, evaluated on the basis of research. But yet I'm one of those R1 type professors who cares deeply about undergraduate education. Should we edit that out and say education again, or do I just keep going? But because it's a large university, I'm often, tasked with these larger lecture classes. And, early on, I found out that I actually really enjoy, honestly, what is the theater of it. And, and I'll defend the traditional lecture as a place where you can get a lot of really good student engagement. I mean, so long as you're not droning on and you do a lot of, activities and demonstrations and sort of things that keep students engaged. So, I've been doing that for years and I feel like I'm pretty good at it. And, students tend to enjoy and feel, engaged in my courses. The one I'm focusing on tonight is social psychology. And this is a class that's usually about 120, 125 people. And I feel lucky because social psychology is an inherently interesting and exciting topic to undergraduate students. It's easy for them to get engaged with it. So it does make my job a lot easier. So I guess my guiding principle for all of my teaching is just the simple engagement. I think a lot of folks tend to think of engagement as a means to an end, and that end is something to do with Bloom's taxonomy of learning this or that and then being critical of this or that. But excuse me, one of the things that it leaves out, and we've talked about this, Bob and I, that it leaves out passion and curiosity and excitement and all those affective components of teaching, and that's where I feel like I do a pretty decent job. So when I talk about engagement, I'm talking about trying to get students to, really dive into the material, dive into these questions. And when I feel like I'm doing a good job, when I hear students say things like, yeah, I was talking about your class with my roommates the other night, or, I got so excited about this topic that I went and read a bunch of other stuff. That's what I'm looking for. And that's my main ends in the class. And so, that's what I try to bring into my online section of social psychology this fall. But the other restriction here, and I think, Janelle will be a nice contrast to this, is that I do have very limited time, to do all these sorts of things. And plus I've got 2 high schoolers doing virtual education, I'm working on a book. And so I'm like, okay, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I'm not like a super tech savvy person when it comes to online teaching. I don't have a lot of background experience with it. Thankfully, I have Bob, whose course on online teaching I took this summer. And so everything that you're going to hear from me about what I've done with Canvas, what I've done with, other ed tech, it's all Bob's fault. So just keep that in mind. So anyway, so yeah, I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. I didn't want to completely reinvent my class because I thought I had a pretty good class. And it was mostly a traditional lecture with a lot of, activities that kind of promote student engagement. So the way my course is typically structured is that I have, some low stakes writing assignments to get students to think and read and write and just kind of get engaged that way. And then I have exams. So again, there's a lot of traditional lecture about the course. And when I transitioned to online, I did retain most of that stuff, but I tried to just put some extra things in to facilitate that engagement and connection. And especially during the time of the pandemic where students are going to, feel a little bit disconnected and isolated, I wanted to do, what I could to get that connection going. But that said, I put in some boundaries early on about what I was willing to do. And so, and some of these are arbitrary and could be argued, but just, this is what I had in mind. Nothing that required an account. So students already have crazy numbers of accounts and passwords they have to keep track of. Nothing that required a fee. So nothing that students had to pay for. And something that is just super user-friendly. I wanted to minimize the amount of time students would have to spend figuring out where this is or how to sign up for that, and maximize the amount of time of actually, engaging in the content of social psychology. So those were my primary goals. And so now what I'll do is I'll screen share and show you kind of what I've been up to with this class. And again, like I really have taken a lot of Bob's good wisdom to try to make this this page and the whole course as streamlined and as simple as possible. So, and I guess I should also add too that I did want to go easy on them a little bit. So this is not probably as intensive as my normal class, and I'm at peace with that because we're none of us operating at full capacity. So one of the things that I do in my very simplistic approach is that my syllabus I try to minimize the length of. We sometimes complain about students not reading the syllabus, but to the extent that they start to resemble, software user agreements, then students aren't going to read them. So, my syllabus itself is pretty straightforward, pretty, of course, now it's not opening, pretty short, and it tries to be as, the simple as possible, basically. Okay, come back here. Cool. Can everybody still see that?
Yeah, we can see it. Excellent.
All right, cool, cool. All right, so
You
you know,
got down to 3 pages. I got to admit, that's
no,
better than mine.
this hurt me because I typically have a syllabus that's 2 pages, but with some of the extra online stuff that I had to include, it ended up being 3. So, you know, I've got my, you know, basic contact information, textbook, course goals, and I try to use normal language with that. And the primary goal is engagement. You know, that's the key. So I spell it out a little bit in more detail, but I really try to emphasize that theme of I want you to just grapple with this stuff, dive in, think, read, listen, learn, talk, and do all that stuff. It's a synchronous online course, so we meet on regular times during regular class periods like we normally would on a normal semester, but we just do it via Zoom. It is a large class, so I do ask them to turn off their mics and cameras so that it's just not a cacophony. But I do, as you'll see try to do some stuff to encourage that engagement. So, you know, I guess I'll go skip through ahead and talk about what the actual work is. They have to do reflection papers for each chapter, where they're asked to do kind of a deep dive into a particular topic in the chapter. And I try to facilitate their engagement outside of just the course materials through these external links tabs that I'll show you. And I design these reflection papers to get them to, you know, check out these other resources that are out there. And I try to make them entertaining. There's some videos, there's some fun articles. I'll show you those in a second. And then I just have some simple online exams. These are some multiple choice, and a big chunk of the exam is essays. Now that's a beast to grade. And what I've found is that with the online essays, they do spend a lot more time and energy on them. They're longer. They're even better than what I've seen when it's in a classroom. And they're easier to grade in a sense because I don't have to deal with horrific handwriting. So that's one bonus. So that's basically it. And then I've got some of the usual, you know, stuff that's in there in any typical syllabus, and then a schedule. But one thing that I hope comes out, you know, in the schedule is that there is not a ton of stuff to do. You know, there's, for each chapter, they do a little reflection paper, there's a due date, and then in each module, there's an exam. Each module might have 2 or 3 chapters, and I thematize it in a way that makes sense to me. So that's pretty much it for the syllabus. So let me show you a little bit about the actual course site, which isn't moving right now. Okay, here we go. All right, so anyway, I've got a simple kind of layout here. Start here module, it introduces some stuff, some contact information, ways to join the, you know, the Zoom session. I'll show you the Padlet here in a second, and I'll explain what that is. It's great, I love it. Let's just go to a module and just see what it looks like. So I have due dates for the readings. I have, and you can edit this part out, but I violated a little bit of copyright law by, you know, making some of my own PDFs. Just, you know, I did it a little bit more than usual. I always give them the first 2, but this year I made a couple more because I know people were scrambling to get textbooks. I have some big questions that I asked them. So these are the things that I really want them to keep in mind. These are the big questions that each of these topics is trying to tackle. And then they do the reflection papers, and I do post video lecture links, and I do have a study guide, which I'll explain a bit too. But let me show you the external links tab real quick. So, you know, these are some really interesting topics that are relevant to, you know, these particular chapters. So for example, Anil Seth has this TED Talk, how your brain hallucinates conscious reality.
I have the exact same one in my class.
That's awesome. I mean, don't you just want to click on that, you know? So it's just it's an amazing, fun video. He's got lots of great demonstrations in it. You know, we talk about cognition in terms of decision making and heuristics and biases, you know, some practical advice, you know, on how you can tame your heuristics and biases. And this is a nice little table that somebody's put together to look at that. I've got, you know, stuff on some of the failures to replicate in social psychology. So we talk about behavioral priming, some of John Barge's work, and then some of the issues surrounding replicability there. You know, of course, you know, Malcolm Gladwell is a great source for a really accessible look into cognition and decision making. So these are just videos. Some of them are some videos and news articles and demonstrations. We talk about, you know, the IAT and other implicit measures, and so they can go take, you know, their own little IAT to find out what their biases are. In chapter 5, I do a deep dive on self-esteem because there's a lot of volatility in that. And of course, we know that there are, you know, depression and anxiety rates are skyrocketing in college students. But, you know, 15 years ago, it was narcissism that was skyrocketing. So that's interesting. What's going on there? So I kind of focus in on that. And again, I try to make it stuff that they'll really want to kind of pursue. And then to incentivize that, right, I tend to ask questions that are relevant to those external links. So one of these reflection papers, the one for chapter 5, is asking exactly about this issue, about how self-esteem is sort of plummeting now and why that might be. I give them some hints in class, and then those external links are designed to also give them some hints. So again, that's just a way to try to get them to check out stuff outside of the typical course materials and do a deep dive. With the exams, they're online, they're not timed, there's none of this, policing in terms of respond to lockdown browsers or whatever, but they are timed. So hopefully that gets them to study. But one of the things I really emphasize is writing. So I have a study guide that's all essay, so they can do this, and it's kind of a beast. So these are all essay questions that are relevant to the topics, and I give them a couple example answers just to tell them what I'm looking for. And I tell them that the essay question on the exam will be very much like what's on the study guide. So if they do the study guide, hopefully they'll do the study guide, because it'll help them to do well on the essay and the exam, and that's just another way to get engagement. Okay, so I'm going to save the weirdest and kind of most fun for last here. That's the Padlet. So again, my lectures, I do lecture, like I normally would, and I do try to include as many demos and examples as I can, and most of them I've been able to translate to the online environment. I do make use of the Zoom polls. Those are fun and easy, so these are just all the ways that I get them to engage. But the way that I think they engage the most is through Padlet. Okay, so Padlet is a very simple website that is just a posting board, and it's anonymous, and anybody can post anything, whether it be a comment or a question or even an image or a video, and then you can respond to each other's, and it's super easy to use. I always post the link to the Padlet in the chat and Zoom, so they can just click on there to go there. And they'll post stuff, and they ask questions during class. Sometimes there's some tangents, and I'm not one of those professors that really tries to nip those in the bud. I did make the mistake maybe today of mentioning to them, hey, I'm going to be showcasing this class and this workshop tonight, and so your Padlet's going to get shared, and that just, they went a little wild with it. Okay, so so this is my Padlet from today. This is just today. So this is all the comments and all of the responses from just today's class. So it's a lot, right? And some of it's just silly. Like I mentioned to them on the Padlet here that, yeah, they're going to be on this webinar thing. Random stuff like, I got a little sleep, but, come on, everybody, you should go to class. And then, hello, world, what's up, psych professors? And then, we were talking about class-related stuff. Some of this stuff comes up that's really simple, like, hey, can you go back one, please? One slide. I just skipped ahead to it. It's like, oh, yeah, sure, I can do that. And we were talking about, I was giving a little spiel about what I was going to talk about tonight, and then that started a discussion about, the weighting of exams versus, assignments and busy work. We talked about timings of exams. Somebody posted this: when you have only a minute to answer each question, there are 99% level of stress, right? Okay, so let me, there's just, there's just a lot of stuff. One of the things that came up today was we were talking about persuasion, and when people are more open to persuasion is often when they're sort of tired or confused, or there's a new change in their context. It kind of makes them a little more malleable. And I used the example that I started drinking water during the pandemic, and I really don't like water, and so they're like, what the hell, why don't you like water? And somebody posted this potato. And then we started talking about advertising, and a little bit of gender role came up in advertising, and then somebody posted this thing. There's just a lot of stuff that comes up here, and today was a little looser than most classes, to be sure.
So could you put this in like a tenure review packet or something?
Well, the thing is, and like I feel weird about this, but I clear the Padlet after every class.
Do you?
So nothing gets saved.
History.
Yeah, I know there is interesting stuff here, and I always feel bad about deleting it, but otherwise it would just get too cluttered. And your free Padlet account only allows you to have 3 Padlets. So, I would have to pay to have like a Padlet for each day. Plus it'd be different links. So, just clearing it, and it's the same.
Screenshots of it?
I could take screenshots of it, but I don't know how motivated I am to do that. And yeah, today was a super loose day. But yeah, what's cool is that like they're responding to each other, like all this stuff underneath. Somebody posts something and then they're talking to one another, and that's really great. They really connect that way. So that's been like the most surprising and fun part of this class is just this connection and this playfulness that comes out of it. And again, some of it is very distracting. We were talking about attitudes and persuasion and how much I love speakers, and somebody said, "Ooh, quick, Michael, name 5 brands of speakers." And so I did, and it's silly, but it's fun, and some of these things you won't even get, like hate the sin, not the sinner. What's that about? I don't even remember, but it was response to something, that I said in class. I have no idea what it was, frankly. But yeah, these are the
it's like
kind
you're
of
channeling their energy to this place and to you.
Yeah. So this one about the Atari, I was using old Atari advertisements that were in magazines that were predominantly text as an example of central route versus peripheral route persuasion. And then my dad still has an Atari and plays it. It's like, okay, cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing. That's fine. That's cool. So yeah, and somebody makes fun of me because I use the term shifting gears a lot. So there's a lot of playful, but then there's serious stuff. Like I was talking about implicit and explicit attitude change. And so people were asking questions about that. But yeah, this was a much more playful day than most days.
Nice.
So anyway, that's my little course overview. I didn't mean for it to go on as long as it did. Sorry.
No, that's okay. And I think this really gives people an appreciation for kind of one end of the spectrum that we're really focusing on tonight.
Oh, can I mention one more thing?
Yes, please.
I don't necessarily encourage this, but if you happen to notice, that's my cell phone number at the bottom of the screen there. And I gave it to them this semester just because I figured like a little bit more connection would be fine. And it has been perfectly reasonable. I get probably 2 or 3 texts a week from students about class-related things. One student emailed me a screenshot of her dying cat and said, "I'm really upset about my cat. Can I take the exam late? I have to go put my cat down today." And so there's some real touching personal stuff. And then she sent me a screenshot of the box and then the paw print on the plaster of Paris and said, "It's over. Thank you for being understanding," or whatever. I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sad." But that's about as personal or as, even remotely out of bounds as they've been. They're usually just asking course-related questions, and they use their phones for that. So I wouldn't necessarily say everybody should give their students their cell phone numbers, but I did. I took a risk, and so far it's been fine.
No, that's awesome. And I think that you shared with us a course that shows us one way to tackle this pandemic, have a little fun, basically limit the technology, try to keep it simple, keep yourself sane, focus on the delivery, focus on that. So now really want to introduce Janelle to talk about her course. So Dr. C, as she's known at the University of Oklahoma, would you walk through your course, which is a far larger course, and I know you've got a much different approach to teaching. So please walk us through it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I can talk a little bit about what I'm dealing with and my perspective some. So I am also at an R1 university, but I'm very, very fortunate to have a position where my primary job is teaching. So I was hired as a master teacher, even though it's an R1. We have 2 of us in the department, and it's worked super well because the people who don't want to teach our big intro classes don't have to anymore. And those of us, I'm exactly like Michael, who I love the stage of it. I love the theatrics of it. I love being in a room of 500 people. That doesn't faze me at all. And a lot of other people aren't good at that and don't want to do it. So being able to do that is amazing. My job is almost teaching and service, and then I do 10% research, and mostly because I want to, and mostly with undergrads. So it's very different, in all fairness. But I also exclusively teach the intro psych class, which means I have nearly 1,000 freshmen. They're all 18. They're coming from, being in high school 3 months ago, living with mom and dad 3 months ago, and they are by and large not even remotely interested in psychology. They don't want to be psych majors. Many of them have no idea what psychology is. So it's really very different in many ways. I definitely love the engagement. I love the playfulness. I'm not a very formal person. but there are many things that I can't do by virtue of nearly 1,000 enrollment, and also the fact that they are so young and so just still learning college. That definitely limits me in some ways. So let me show you what I got. All right, so let me share around and go through this stuff. So here is my, here's my main course. This is when you first log into Canvas. We have our own logo. One of my TAs drew that a couple of years back, and we have t-shirts and sweatshirts and stuff with it, which is super fun. The TAs all order them. It's great. And so, so this is my main class. And I also have tried to keep everything relatively laid out. These are the main links that they need kind of throughout the semester. At the beginning of the semester, we have our getting started checklist that they go to and things like that. And then the main things that they need are these big buttons right up here. So I try to really make it simple. And so if we go into the full syllabus, mine is definitely not 2.5 pages. It's much longer than that. Now I send them out a very short, very short, it's probably 3 or 4 pages, syllabus. That is, but it's fun. It has blocks of color and pictures and text all over it, and that goes out to them a week before the semester starts to give them an idea of what the class is going to be like. So they've already sort of made that, and I've introduced myself and I've sent out that, so they have some background and some connection already. So then they come in, and this is the syllabus that they see. And what I did was I broke it, because it is so long, I broke it into links so that they could jump to whatever part they need instead of scrolling through that whole thing to try to find it. So they really only need to, you know, pop in when they need it. So, you know, if you go to grading policy, for example, I've tried to make everything as clear as possible. It's just that there's a lot of it. So, so they kind of go through and they can see exactly where they stand and what kinds of assignments are there. A lot of other parts are more text heavy, but I talk about the structure and the philosophy and what I believe in. I say a lot about my learning-centered philosophy, that you need to learn from experiences, not focus so much on grades, and I talk to them a lot about that as we go. The course is structured so that each of, in non-pandemic life, we are in a giant classroom with 500 students in a morning class and 500 students in an afternoon class. In each of those classes, they're broken up into smaller teams of 60. So it's not, we don't have like discussion sections or anything. It's just me and my big class. But within that big class, each team of 60 is led by an undergraduate teaching assistant. And that's really important to me because, number one, I think it benefits the students tremendously when you've got that big a number to have some personal connection with a person who is their person, not a scary person. You know, they're just a semester later than them. Most of the time I draw my TAs from that current semester's class for the next semester. So they're exactly their peer group, just, you know, a semester or 2 ahead. They're much less scary than the graduate students and than I am. And so the students are more willing to go to them. So they have their teams of 60, they pick the teams, and they have a lot of connection with their team TA is what we call them. So I have 18 undergraduate TAs and 6 graduate students who help me manage this course. And it's organized chaos, no doubt about it, but that's what we do. So again, here's the, you know, like I said, the main syllabus in Canvas. And then from there, I have, you know, the same sort of modules set up. We don't do much in modules, honestly, because a lot of my class is in Top Hat, which I'll show you in a minute. But if you look at the units, what I've done is try to give them a framework, because again, most of the students have not had any interaction with psychology whatsoever. They have no idea what they're getting into. And so I'm trying to give them some background information on not only what we're studying, but why and how this all fits together. So we have 4 units. Each unit is just an exam period, but there's a method why I put the chapters together that I've together. And this is where I'm trying to explain that. So I'm telling them that, like, you know, this first unit gives you the basics and the fundamentals, and here's what you're doing, and here's why. And so they've got these overviews of, you know, what is psychology, scientific method, brain and behavior, typical stuff, but I'm trying to give them more of a reason for why this is what I've chosen for them to be learning. And so then when, they see all the links and kind of what they're going to be doing. And they have, as far as assignments go, I'll show you their typical homework in a minute, but they have discussions, they have weekly homework, and they have 4 exams, and then 3 application assignments. So the application assignments are paper assignments, kind of, sort of. They're meant to get them deep diving into a particular topic, but they are supposed to be kind of fun. So like this first one is an infographic. So they create an infographic based on one of psychology's greatest myths. So these are the kinds of instructions they'll see. Would be an overview, specific requirements. Here's a list of greatest myths that they can choose from, which I change from semester to semester. Resources where they can find it, examples, and then every assignment has a checklist. Now this, Michael, may be something that you would never do in a class that has, upper division majors, but freshmen, they're doing this. So, so we have all of these, yes, I did this. Yes, I did this. And it just helps to keep them accountable to knowing exactly what I expect, but also to keep things very, very transparent. So they know this is exactly what is expected at every step of the way. And then I have all of my grading rubrics. So the students can see them, they're right there. This is what the TAs and the GAs are using to grade because they're the ones grading. And so the students can see exactly how they're being assessed at all times. If the students feel like their grades were unfair, we have a form for that. They fill out a grade review form that asks them, what were you assigned to do? What did their TA say? What did you lose points for? And why do you feel like this is unfair? So we have procedures in place for all that kind of stuff. So their exams are also all online. We take them through Top Hat, which is another program that we use. Same basic idea, honestly, it's 50 questions, multiple choice. I also do not believe in having them watched, having them monitored or proctored. They are, they're timed, and Top Hat has an interesting thing where they allow for multiple versions of a question. So I can write an exam question, and then I can write alternates, like 1, 2, 3, as many alternates as I want, and the program just picks one of those alternates of each question to actually show for the students. So not only is it timed, but also the students aren't all getting the exact same question. And I think that really helps, but it's open book, open notes. I want them to be able to use their resources, and I'm using a lot of harder questions. I'm asking them compare and contrast things, apply this to everyday life, that they, even if they knew the definition, they couldn't just get if they didn't understand the concept. So that's the idea. So as far as the sort of external things that we use, I definitely did not keep us from having to create accounts or do other stuff outside. Ed tech is just, I love it. It's a hobby. And also there's some really cool stuff out there. So in a similar way, kind of to the way Michael does Padlet, we do discussions on a program called Packback. It's not as fun, but it's graded. It's a big part of their grade in the class. So I have to have a way to assess 1,000 students every week for their discussions that doesn't make us all want to dive off a cliff. So this is what we do. And so I'll take you into and show you, these are all the teams. Again, we have groups of 60. So that's all the teams. Each one of those is 60 students. And so in these teams, they come in and they write questions, and this is what they look like. So their due dates are on Fridays of each week. They have to write one question and respond to 4 students. And they can respond to one student 4 times, whatever. I'm not, picky about that. But my rule is just that it has to have something to do with psychology. It does not have to be about what we're doing that day, that week. In fact, I want them to just get curious about what topics we've talked about. This last week we were talking about sleep and dreams. So, some of them do have to do with that, but they certainly don't have to. One of the really great things that I love about this particular program is that as the students are typing, it's giving them real-time feedback on sentence structure, on depth of questions, on Socratic questioning, like on the side panel as they're typing in real time. So they get a lot of really great feedback that they're not getting if you just use like the Canvas discussion board. And they're getting, you know, fun things too. We can spark their ideas and posts and do all sorts of fun stuff there. So they seem to really like it. So let me take you over and show you Top Hat, which is the thing we use the most often, honestly. And so one of the things that that I think are really different between Michael and I is the amount of time. I definitely spend a whole bunch of time working, a ton. But I have a ton of students, and in all fairness, I decided that it was a great idea to edit a textbook for my students in the middle of a pandemic, and that was not the best idea in hindsight. Because I'm writing this book, or what we call the textbook, which is what I'm showing you. And that's taking a lot of work. And so in all fairness, in a normal semester, I wouldn't be trying to write this as the same time as I'm teaching all of these students, but that's what I'm doing now. So the advantage here is that I get to write all of this. So everything that's been put in here, I've done. I can edit anything. I can take out a sentence, add a sentence anytime I want to. They've got some really cool interactive stuff that you can play with. And some of it's just kind of gratuitous playing with things, honestly, but it looks really cool. And so all sorts of different ways we can do things. All of these little things, when you hover over them, it pops up definitions, all things that I've written. So you can add in tips, you can add in techniques, you can add in anything you want from there. And so the students go through and they do all of this reading. And again, this is a week. So they do all of this reading and they do all of these things, and embedded are all of these questions. And so they are answering these as they're going in the reading. And so it's basically checking their reading along with it. Every single one of these questions has a hint, for example, and I'm in the teacher mode so I can show you. So everyone has a hint. They get 2 chances to do it. And then it has an explanation where everyone gets, if they get the answer wrong the first time, they get the hint. Whether they get it right or wrong the second time, they get the explanation. So a lot of students have said, I didn't get it at first, but then I looked at the hint, tried it again, and now I get it. So it sort of is teaching them again with some background stuff. So they read, and you get the idea. Lots of reading. And then at the very end, every module has simple question: what concepts did you find confusing? What's unclear? And then I go through these every week, and that's what I use to record lecture videos. So with 1,000 students, we do everything asynchronous because that's the only way to do it, I think, with 1,000 students. And so I'm, instead of just recording, 3 hours of lecture a week, what I'm trying to do is target to the things that they need. Since I'm already writing the book stuff, they've got enough of me. So what I do is I post my lecture slides that I would normally be showing in class, along with the polling questions that I would normally be showing in class. Those are all posted now. And so they go through this, and as they go through it, what I've done is just taken their questions and added a video here and there. So, where those questions are, things that they've said, I really don't understand this, it's really confusing. Those are the things that I've just, gone in and posted a video about. So, so again, these are all my slides, and these are all the things that you can see there. So that's really all I've got to show as far as those things go. Of course, I can, pop up and show anything else as we go if we're interested in that. But I think that there's a lot of, a lot of really interesting similarities and a lot of interesting differences between us that are really fun to talk about.
Yeah, I agree.
It's kind of like apples and orangutans, there's so many differences, but there's also some similarities. Yeah.
Exactly. So maybe we can kind of point out, we kind of, basically, I think we have a comparison between someone who took took a minimalist approach.
Yeah, I'm not offended.
And, probably I'm just curious in terms of like workload. I know you spent a lot of time in the summer thinking about how to teach online, stuff like that. But I mean, how many hours do you think you put into designing your course? And then every week, how many hours are you putting into managing your course and delivering your course? I guess I'll start with you, Michael.
Yeah, the designing during the summer, that's hard to gauge. I mean, I did spend quite a bit of time with it. It was, dozens of hours. I'm not even sure. It was a lot. I mean, I didn't have a whole lot of fun this summer. None of us did. But you know what I think really stands out to me now is that on any given week, I can't imagine like when Janelle sleeps. Is like really like I've been teaching this course for 20 years. I know it backwards and forwards. I do every week get a little bit excited about some like, oh, here's a new little external link, that I can add to the little external links. So it's what's nice about what I'm doing now is that it's just adding a little bit of gravy, to what I've already got. I don't actually have to do a whole lot of stuff during the week. Now, the grading of those reflection papers that the students write, I showed you the one on self-esteem, they have to be at least 250 words. I think I failed to mention that. And so that's, it's not a lot, but it's a chunk. And I do have a TA that grades those. But when it comes to the essays in the class, I feel like I should be the one to grade those on the exams. And each exam, I don't know, I probably spend about 6 hours or more grading those essays. So that is a chunk of time. But really, I don't do a whole lot outside of class, because it's already kind of there.
Dozens of hours to prepare the course. And then would you say maybe 12, 15 hours a week to manage it on average? Or
I mean, if you include class time, then it's probably still even less than that. Probably 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how about you, Janelle? And I know we're probably going to all fly off our chairs when we hear it, but how much time do you think now, and I know this is a tough question for you because you've been teaching for a long time and you've made progress, but maybe just thinking about what you did this summer.
I think teaching, I've been teaching face-to-face these giant classes for so long that I same thing, I know it backwards and forwards. I can walk in and do it. And I, like many people, have found that teaching online is harder. It's harder to keep everyone in one place. It's harder to keep them engaged. And I'm fighting a whole bunch to just keep them interested, keep them with me. I have 2 of my grad students who are assigned to outreach. Find the kids who are dropping off, like go chase them electronically, of course. Don't like stalk their houses, but find them and, and keep track of them. So we just have, it's hard teaching freshmen, but, so the thing I just showed you on neurons, that is one of 7 modules in that chapter. So it has taken a long time to create this book. I would say at least 30 hours a week on just managing the course, and probably easily another 20 on writing the book, easily. Because what I end up dealing with is, I've got about 100 students' emails a day, give or take, just coming to me. And actually in my syllabus, the email address that I have listed in the syllabus goes to my GA. So those are just people who either the GA has forwarded to me because I need to make a judgment call on, or they have gotten my email from a response that I've given to them or the website or somewhere else. They're actually getting the bulk of them. So there's just a lot of emails. And I spend a lot of time talking to the TAs through GroupMe. We have like 5 GroupMes, and there are a lot of just constant messages of, hey, my student asked me this, what do I tell them? Or, hey, this is happening, what do I tell them? And it's just amazing how instant it is. And that's, definitely one thing that I think is new about teaching 100% online, is that when we're face to face, I can put out fires, and there's always fires, but I can put out the fires face to face and say, hey, you guys, trust me, it's going to be okay. If there's a glitch, if there's a change that needs to be made, you know me, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to be fair. We're all in the same room together. Let me just give you the information once. Now it's hundreds of emails and announcements and texts, and, for any one little thing that goes wrong. So that's definitely a whole bunch more work. And I think that that's part of what's going into that time management issue. But this is also the only class I teach. So it's not like I'm spending 8 hours on that class plus 10 hours on this class plus this is it. This is my whole job, is running this curriculum for myself, and we have 14 other sections of intro. So, all of those put together.
But that doesn't count your service time.
No.
Or your research time, your 10% research time.
So I just went back and checked my emails from my folders for each class. My average is about 10 a week. So that right there, I just mind-boggling.
On
Well,
my
and
schedule, I map out 2 hours a day for email, 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the afternoon.
wow,
Yeah.
wow. Now, if we track Michael for the next decade or so and he keeps teaching online, he might grow a massive course like that. But you've got a very elaborate course. Now, one of the good things, I think, is your course is also available. I mean, pretty much your book and all those resources you built is available for others, right? They could get it from you, couldn't they?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing is, it's a labor of love. I really honestly do enjoy it. I enjoy writing it. I enjoy putting stuff together, and the students have made like such great comments about it being clear and concise and fun. One told me in office hours yesterday that it's like reading a regular novel, that it's not, she doesn't feel like she's reading a textbook. And that's awesome. And I love that. And once it's done, I mean, I will always tweak it and find things to make better. But that part is done. And the advantage is that I don't ever have to try to fit what I'm teaching into somebody else's mold. And that's so huge. Before we were using a textbook, a traditional textbook, and there were ways that they explained it that I just plain did not agree with, or, whole chapters we weren't using, things like that. And I never have to do that again. And that's totally eventually going to be worth it, probably when I think back on it next year, when I'm done with it. Not right now, but then later.
Janelle, can you elaborate a little bit more about like your decision to ditch the textbook? Because I've known you the entire time I've known you, you've been a very strong like textbook reader, have it, the embedded assignments and all of that stuff. So what really made you decide to switch? Like I see like you mentioned some of the things that you thought of, but like what are some other, when did you make this decision and how has that?
Yeah, so I mean, I've used Top Hat in class for 5 years now, and I've loved it. I love the polling, the live polling. I've used it to give exams live in class for a couple of years, so I've always done that. Honestly, what did it for me was the move online in the middle of last semester. Obviously, I mean, that happened for everyone. It was terrible. I mean, there's no there's no good thing that that everybody was nervous and scared and scrambling, and we had hundreds of students like that. And so what I made the decision when we moved online to try and keep things as consistent as possible. I thought that would be the best way to be kind to them. And so I kept everything in Top Hat instead of, trying to move things to Canvas. They were used to having class every day, coming in, opening Top Hat, having the slides run through Top Hat, bang, we're done. So I decided to keep them in Top Hat. And what I did was I took all my slides and then I just wrote a bunch of notes in between the slides. Exactly what I would say, well, not exactly, but close, in class. I've been doing it for 10 years. I know how I deliver the content, and I just started writing it. Mm-hmm. And that's what I gave them, again, with some videos intermixed. And they really liked it. And I started getting some comments and some feedback, like, I wish we could just do this. And so I started polling them. And I do a couple of polls every semester anyway, just to make sure I'm on the same page. And my TAs helped tremendously, letting me keep the pulse on like the class feel. But I did a couple of polls and I asked them, how are you using the textbook? How are you using the questions that are embedded, that are supposed to be, adjusting to you and your ability level? And the majority of them said, no, I'm just going in, answering the questions as fast as I can and reading what I absolutely have to, because it won't let me go any further until I do it. It's okay. So you're not getting the benefit out of it. It's a great system, but it doesn't work if you don't use it. Mm-hmm. And they basically said, we don't use it. So I started asking them, okay, given this that what system do you think works better? What do you feel like you learned more from? And I mean, overwhelmingly, they said that they really, really, really liked the Top Hat part, the writing that I did and all of that. And, around, I guess, mid-summer, early summer, I was talking to one of the Top Hat reps who was working with our university on creating an enterprise agreement. And I was telling him, yeah, they really liked using all this stuff and it was really great and kind of fun. And he said, so why don't you just do that? And I thought, oh, I honestly, like Sierra said, I've been using it for the other stuff for so long that it hadn't honestly really occurred to me that I could just do something else, like out of the clear blue. And so I said, you know what, I think I will, and discussions and talks and whatnot. And that's really why I did it. Yeah, they weren't getting as much out of it as I thought they were. And I was having to work too hard to fit the mold of that traditional book. So
no, I love it. I'm such a OER person. And so I love this. And I actually, funnily enough, have found myself doing a similar thing. I don't have a textbook. It's not a complete textbook and it doesn't have questions or anything. Yours is much fancier. I also found myself basically just writing what I would do in the classroom.
yeah.
Just writing it down.
Yeah, I love that they still get my voice like that, right? They still get to hear kind of from me, even if I'm not delivering lectures. It's still me through the text.
Yeah, and like you said, you taught the content so much. You have like the best explanation down, like how you would explain it in a way that students are going to get it the most, usually, because you said it that way. You hone your definitions and things like that.
Sure.
And as you teach face-to-face, it totally makes sense to put that into a text for the students. Like you said, it's so much more concise and clear. There's not all that extraneous stuff that textbooks tend to have that students are bored by or don't want to pay attention to. So I really love that. Do you think you might publish this for open source? Like you've got to get your Creative Commons license on it?
No, it won't be open source. So Top Hat text, yeah, they're not Top Hat text. Some of them are. They have like the Nova text inside of them and everything like that. But the ones that have any sort of decent, I mean, not decent, the ones that have any sort of like level of cool stuff, like the 3D diagrams and the extra stuff and all of that, those are a cost. So it's $50 to the students to get this, which is still significantly cheaper than what they were paying before.
Yeah, for sure. But it's a good middle ground.
Hey, I'm wondering about like what is it about the students that are, what is it that the students like about the text you're writing? And I'm wondering like if it's just a little less formal, a little more authentic. You know, I think that these textbooks, they need to change. They're too stuffy.
Yes.
That's not dumbing down. That's just making it more real and authentic. You know, and that sounds like that's what you're doing. It's just what students want.
Yeah, it's absolutely. It's a combination of being able to, you know, basically break down what I've done in the classroom for a really long time with my personality. And, you know, they get to know me through the videos and stuff like that. But I 100% agree with you about the language. We're teaching them concepts already that they don't know. Why make it harder because they have to figure out how to read these really abstract sentences that use formal language that they don't use or encounter in everyday life? So I use contractions, I use normal everyday writing. I know, I say can't and won't, and like that's okay. Yeah, I'm very informal, but still get the message across. It's not easier by any means. It's just, yeah, less stuffy. I love that description.
I think this is fantastic, and I feel like Janelle and I need to talk about writing an OER, because like, and Michael, you had such a good point about like textbooks have been this way for so long, and students hate them. Like, why do we continue to make them read them? They're so hard to read. I hate reading textbooks. Yes. I hate it. They're boring and they're hard. And I have a PhD, like we're expecting 18 and 19-year-olds to read this
exactly.
material.
It's a
like,
weird,
that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a vestigial way of writing, and I don't know what the cultural norm was there, but it doesn't have to be that way.
No, you need to write a real simple intro psych book that, you know, maybe 200 pages, maybe.
Yeah. And again, I want to emphasize, not dumbed down,
Right.
just maybe more just authentic, genuine, and real.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
So,
it looks like more like a nonfiction novel with embedded media and videos. It looks, but it looks like your slides with supporting text.
It's better.
Yeah.
More graphic too. Like when I was talking about what I was doing in a similar fashion to what Janelle is doing, I'm taking a more graphic approach. Like,
Yeah.
I think you've probably seen it, Janelle, but it's
Yeah.
much more graphic and really, mine is really pared down compared to yours. I take a very minimalist approach in terms of text and the concepts I want them to learn and things like that. But yeah, I think so far students seem to really like that approach, and they seem to really like your approach too, which is really cool.
Yeah, I definitely make sure that there's never too much text without something, a video or an image or just something to break it up, because we go sort of zombie after we read for a while, and all of a sudden we read for 20 minutes and have no idea what we read. There's got to be those concept checks in there and those questions and just stuff to keep them active, especially for freshmen who aren't used to this level. I mean, they've had worksheets and they've had textbooks in some cases that are 10 years old, and it's just, we gotta meet them where they are, I think, a little bit.
I agree.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I was thinking of is Michael, I remember when you were working on your course, there was a point at which yours was going to be moving a little closer. And I mean, not all the way to where Janelle's at, but maybe, a few significant steps closer.
Yeah.
And then you kind of reached out and said, I got to stop this. And you kind of, stopped that.
Yeah.
We were well underway to designing that course.
Yeah, I did. And I guess what I'm about to say is at risk of offending Janelle. So just, bear with me, Janelle.
You're not going to offend me, I promise.
But I do worry, that students are spending so much time on the busy work. And, and if there's some obvious meaningful component to it where they feel like, oh yeah, this is helping me to understand, then I think they're on board with it. But I think a lot of the stuff, and Janelle, again, I've not looked at your stuff, so I don't know, but, it seems like a lot of it is, this just, they're used to the sort of grade boosty stuff from high school that they know is BS, but they at least helps their grades. And so they're willing to do it. It's this really unhealthy contract that I just can't do. And I tried to sort of look at, okay, what are people doing? And well, it's a lot of little things. I'm like, okay, I'll do a lot of little things. And then there's just this part of me that the old teacher self of me was like, it's just not how I teach. This is not how I want to engage my students. So I think of teaching and learning as a very much a leisure activity, which I know is not with the norms of our times, but I feel like, giving them that space to sit with an idea, mull it around, chew on it for a while. I mean, I think that's where a lot of the real connection happens. And the more stuff we make them do, the less time they have to just sit with an idea or a question or a concept. So, that was partly what was going on. And then I was also thinking about my own children who are in high school, doing virtual high school, how much time they just spend trying to find the thing and figure out the thing and to do the thing. And I just, wanted to minimize that. So I just went for the simplicity thing for that reason too. But the third thing was really the pandemic and just me being a softie, and just knowing that nobody was at peak capacity. And it's like, you know what, if it's a little bit easier for them, I'm okay. Nobody's going to be at peak learning right now. And and that's just how it is.
So, I mean, compared to prior semesters, how do you guys feel your students have responded to your changes?
Janelle, you want to go first, or?
I mean, I've never, it's not a typical prior semester to this semester. Everything is not equal. And I don't have another semester of teaching this many students in this kind of capacity to compare it to. I'm trying to be very cognizant of, we have tons of students who are emailing, and saying I'm sick or my loved ones are sick or, that kind of thing. And I give a lot of extensions, a lot of things like that, of course. And a fair amount of their work is completion. So, Hackback is graded on completion. The top hat questions that are embedded are 50% completion, 50% did you get it right, but you got two chances with a hint. So a lot of it is that learning process. I don't know. I don't know that I have a good barometer to gauge a comparison.
Okay.
I think for me,
go ahead.
Okay, well, sorry. Yeah, no, for me, it's I think a little bit easier because Janelle, you've had to change a lot of things, and I changed as little as I could, but then I ended up changing a little bit more. But I feel like I almost hate to say it, but I feel like there's more engagement with the online class than my in-person class because of the Padlet. And they do use the chat function on Zoom too, for sure. But, there's a part of me that's like actually impressed at how much better student engagement is in a lecture class online when they have something like this Padlet to just be playful with and just shoot comments and questions out. And I mean, that's been a really pleasant surprise. And it's just, wow, that I didn't know that could be a thing that worked. So, I mean, that's one thing that's the, in terms of the differences, that's the one that stands out, is that I'm honestly getting better engagement that way. I mean, maybe there's other ways that they're not engaging that I can't even see, because like, they're like on their phones on the Zoom laying in beds with one eye barely open because they haven't even gotten out of bed yet. Now, maybe that's all going on. I don't know. But, the engagement that I see from the instructor side has been good.
Okay.
Do you think that Padlet is something you could take back to the classroom with you?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. It's a great question. I don't know. I'm playing with it.
Yeah.
One of the things I've done throughout this, and the folks who were in Bob's class, there were a lot of folks at UT who took Bob's online teaching class this summer, and a lot of us are traditional classroom teachers, and we were just, come on, we want to just go back to it, and we don't want to do anything for this online stuff that we can't readily transport back to a face-to-face classroom. So we did have a lot of that in mind. And so, for example, with the Canvas site, I really spruced it up. I used Canvas much less, before the pandemic. And so these external links, the online submissions, just the more streamlined, accessible stuff is vastly improved. And that's easily going to be transferable back to the classroom. And then I'm thinking like, well, they're all coming to class with their phones. Why not just have a Padlet? And then I could maybe just bring an extra laptop to class, and that could be the Padlet, and I can just monitor that like I do when I'm teaching online now.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about doing that.
Yeah, I think you should try it out.
Yeah.
Like some of the stuff that they're bringing is great.
The thing that I'm missing in my class that I would really, really like to be able to do is that more, playful interaction. We have, so in our face-to-face classes, I have a discussion board that I open up in Top Hat that's anonymous, so students, can ask questions, and one of my graduate students monitors that in real time, and then lets me know if there's questions that I should, that I can address, that I can answer to the class when we're, on a break, answering questions or something like that. But it doesn't tend to be super fun and playful. It tends to be like, when's the next test and that kind of thing. We don't have a lot of that playfulness. That tends to happen with the TAs in their group meets, where they do a lot of like posting memes and talking, amongst the like 18 to 20-year-olds together. But then I miss it, and I want some of that too, So I wish there was something I could do that that would get them interacting like that with me. So I think that's an awesome idea.
I wonder if a lot of it has to do with the fact that you're teaching predominantly freshmen and I'm teaching predominantly juniors and seniors. I'm less scary now, you're still scary.
Sure.
So I think I know you're so
so scary. No,
I mean, I want to hide your video. You're so intimidating.
So some have said like I had to really take a minute to like log into office hours so I talk to you in person, and I'm like, why?
Yeah.
But you all the time.
Yeah, they lose their respect for us the further they go, and then they're like, "Yo, professor."
That's definitely true.
Well, I'm just glad that Michael, you were able to keep your playful side in your online course.
Yeah, I don't know that that's anything other than just who I am. For those of y'all who don't know me well, I'm sure, you seem very similar this way. Just like, I'm not professional.
No. I don't want to be one of those professors ever.
No.
Mm-mm.
And I think having fun is really important. And there are some times when I wonder if, at some points I get too far into curriculum that I lose sight of that. So I will admit that. Because,
the risk, though, if you looked at that Padlet from earlier, my God, they were all over the place. And I'm like, okay, there's a thread going on talking about Chacos. Okay. I use Chacos as an example. That's what's happened with the Padlet, is that like, I'll use a random example about how like, people say that they choose their own attitudes, but why all of a sudden is everybody wearing Chacos? Like, that's like clearly you all being influenced by somebody here. And then there's this whole thing about, I hate Chacos. I love Chacos. And it's like, that's not really the point. So there's a risk of too playful.
I think there's.
But they're going to remember that. They're going to remember that example. They're going to remember the discussion because they related it to themselves, right?
Yeah, oh, sure, but are they going to remember the whole point of it?
Probably. I mean,
Well,
research shows that they're not going to remember much anyway. They might as well have fun not remembering.
There we go.
And that's why I emphasize the engagement, right? Because it's like, okay, no, on some post-test 10 years from now, everybody's going to get a big old fat 0. But for that period, they're going to have engaged and thought like a social psychologist, and that's, what I'm going for.
Well, and I think that's important. So, I mean, and one of the things that I think probably is important to think about is years ago, there weren't as many, quote, learning activities. They weren't necessarily built into class. It was pretty much all lecture. And I think a lot of folks were just used to this idea that learning activities, practice, that's what you do when you study. And I think that Janelle's on track with freshmen, and she's trying to, provide scaffolding, I think, in a way to get them to do some of the things that they probably will not do otherwise.
Right.
Like engage in some retrieval practice.
Yes. Yeah. Michael, your idea about needing to sit with it and think through things, and absolutely 100%. But mine aren't it's not that they're not thinking, but they're not sitting and spending hours thinking about the complexities of psychology, this gen ed class that they are required to take because it's a stepping stone to whatever they think their major is going to be, that it may not be,
yet another difference. I mean, they're like, yeah.
No, they're not in it like that. And so we have lots and lots of small activities to do that scaffolding, to get them feedback early and often, to make sure that they have multiple ways of being assessed that aren't just, I messed up this first exam because I don't know how to study and I thought reading my notes 100 times was going to get it done. A lot of that hopefully disappears throughout the course of, the next couple of years. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that I would do differently if I had a class of, junior, senior majors that I can't do.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, we're going to have to advocate that at least every once in a while you get to, just for that little glimpse of what it's like to have a student who's even more conscientious.
Yeah, I really do look at the folks who are teaching predominantly like first-year students as doing the hard work, and then that makes it easier for me later. So thanks.
Would you teach an intro psych, Michael?
I taught. I mean, I think I told you this once about like I the last time I taught intro was the previous century, So
I think you'd be good at it if you could take your playful side to it.
I could try. I mean, it's just intro is such a tough class. There's just it's the breadth depth thing, right? Like there's this such pressure to do the breadth, and then there's just all this pushback against depth, and I don't know how you can balance that, Janelle. I have no idea.
And you throw on top of that just the simple training them how to be a college student.
Yeah.
And adults. I mean, we get so many questions that are just plain, how do I update my driver's license? And I know that's not, but like nobody's told them that before. And the TAs especially are like, I don't know how to do that either. And so I wind up momming a lot, and I'm okay with that persona. And part of it is I have a 19-year-old, so it comes naturally to me to be able to associate and get along and understand the brains of 18-year-olds because I have one, but also I think you really have to have that sort of parent vibe to be able to get them from point A to point B, and that's definitely part of it.
Yeah. I think it's funny because like I can totally relate to that. I think I have a parent vibe to them too. But this is sort of sad, honestly, but what I get are these, panicked, juniors and seniors who are like, freaking out about their futures. And they're like, I don't know what to do with myself. And then some of them have developed some really poor coping along the ways. And so now they're talking to me about, their substance misuse. So I get stuff like that. And, sometimes that's a bit heavy.
That's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It seems like a lot of times we're teaching other skills that are important for them to be able to learn what we're teaching, like conscientiousness and all that. I think
and like Janelle said, like it's okay, I'm okay with it. I mean, like, hey, I helped you. I feel good about that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't have great boundaries as far as like, no, you can't talk to me about this, or I'm not going to share this with you. I post, if I did the video of my dog or like my son's doing, I absolutely share that kind of stuff. So
yeah. Same.
Well, one of the good things I know about both of you is you're very giving. So I know Janelle is more than happy to share some of the resources that she's built for her course. We'll include that in the show notes for this particular episode. And I know Michael you're probably more than willing to share some of the things you've done or be
all
content.
my 3 things.
So we've covered kind of the spectrum from minimalist to maybe comprehensive and maybe even, you know, best practice in terms of what to do for intro psych. So we got a lot of ideas of things that we want to do in the future. I think in our second episode, we're going to focus on how people responded to the global awakening, the racial tensions that we're going through right now. And so how they adjusted their curriculum. And I know all of you probably did some things for that. Are there any last minute comments? Jennifer, do you want to share something? Others?
I'm sad I don't have Canvas. That is what I learned in this video. I don't have Canvas.
Are you just Teams, right?
We have Moodle, yeah, that's what we have.
Okay.
So
Ted, we have Moodle too. And I've been playing a lot with some of the pages and stuff that you can do. Make it look more like Canvas.
I need to do that. And then
we'll do a demo maybe.
Padlet in my high flex course, because I have a class where like half the students are online and in person at one time. And I think Padlet would be a great way to get them all engaging at the same time. So I'm going to try that. We'll see.
I think it's a great idea. Yeah. I wonder how y'all, the high flex folks, are doing it, because
it's a hot mess. Like most of my students just want to be online because I think they don't want to engage at all. And so I'm trying to figure out ways to get them to do that. So I think Padlet may be a good way to keep them entertained and engaged while I'm lecturing.
No, I mean, I will say that like I did have to sell it a little bit. I did talk to a few other folks that I know who are using it or who are teaching online. Just sort of say, hey, this is working out pretty well for me. It's pretty cool. And a couple folks tried it and they just didn't get the same level of activity. So, you know, there's a lot of things that I think you can do to kind of encourage the participation in Padlet. So, for example, easy stuff like post the link to your Padlet in your Zoom chat, you know, every day. So they just all have to do is click on it. And then, you know, maybe what I do sometimes is I'll post a couple like open-ended prompt questions in the Padlet myself that then people start chatting about. And then I do, just because I have such a informal, unprofessional, tangent-prone, playful demeanor than that you saw, you know, what you see today. And I'm okay with it, right? Especially during the pandemic when people are feeling disconnected, you know, just if they end up talking about Chacos, okay. But yeah, you got to just kind of emphasize the playfulness of it. Just go out and, you know, just post stuff. Now, one of the things that I would worry about a little bit is as the semester progresses and people get increasingly grumpy and burnt out, perhaps the Padlet starts to go south. And so far that has not been a problem at all. You know, everybody's been very polite and very welcoming, and I think they feel like a community, and so they're being cool. But there was a little tiff that happened earlier on because we were talking about dissonance and safe sex behavior and hypocrisy and using safe sex as an example of that. And then there was a whole Padlet discussion about, you know, well, I believe in abstinence only. And then, well, that's stupid, you know. And so it's like, well, hold on, kids, let's be good here, you know. So I think you have to be mindful and just really try to encourage, you know, respect. And they know that because they've seen too much flame war on the internet and they think it's terrible as much as we do.
Right. Very cool. I'm excited.
I really want to thank both of you, Dr. Michael Olson, Dr. Jennifer Cavazos.
So you just called her, you just failed at Jennifer's name.
I have a last question.
We've only known each other for how long?
Oh my goodness.
10, 12 years, whatever.
She knows I'm like this. No, and I guess maybe I really want to thank you guys. Really want to thank you, Dr. Michael Olson. Thank you, Dr. Janelle Cavazos. One thing I will say, knowing both of you, I know Janelle a lot more, but I've gotten to know Michael a lot, as I think your course and your course philosophy, your course practice also match your personalities very well, and probably the unique skill set that you have, because I know that Janelle is absolutely brilliant with technology and with planning things out, and this textbook that she's doing, I'm sure is awesome. And I also know that Michael is very, very interesting in the way that he presents his content, uses really nice slides and great questions, gets really good, you know, reactions from folks. And both of you I know are passionate about what you teach. So thank you for being part of our inaugural episode of Course Studies, a showcase of teaching practices and principles. So thank you.
It was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you very, very much.